Welcome to the Real English Learning Podcast, where real conversations help you build real English. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Maya. And today we are talking about something that I am personally, deeply, professionally familiar with: overthinking.
Deeply and professionally. That is commitment to a topic.
I have spent years studying my own overthinking from the inside. I consider myself something of an expert, an unwilling expert, but still.
And I think that is exactly why this topic makes for such a rich conversation. Because overthinking is incredibly common, and yet it is also consistently misunderstood. People treat it as a character flaw, a weakness, something you should just be able to switch off.
As if someone has never thought of that. Oh, just stop overthinking? Incredible. Problem solved. Thank you.
The advice that helps nobody. Today, we want to do better than that. We want to actually understand what overthinking is, why it happens, who it happens to, and what genuinely helps.
And we want to do it in natural, rich B2 English. So you are not only getting insights that might genuinely be useful, you are also building the vocabulary to talk about your own mental life more precisely and confidently.
Because being able to describe what is happening in your mind in English is a real skill, and it matters.
We also have a word tour at the end with 8 B2 words and phrases from today. So stay with us for those.
Let's get into it. And Maya, I want to start with a question. When did you first realize you were an overthinker?
Oh, that question itself is going to make me overthink.
Perfect start.
Okay. I think I first realized it properly in my early 20s. I would make a perfectly ordinary decision: what to order at a restaurant, how to reply to an email, and then immediately start running an internal audit of whether I had chosen correctly.
An internal audit. That is a very precise description. You are cross examining your own choices before the consequences have even arrived.
Exactly. And the exhausting part is that the thinking does not improve the decision. The decision is already made, but the mind keeps processing it anyway, like a program that has finished its task but forgot to close.
That image is uncomfortably accurate. And I think it gets at what overthinking actually is, because it is worth being precise about this. Overthinking is not the same as thinking carefully. Thinking carefully is productive. You are working through a problem, gathering information, weighing options, and arriving at a decision.
Overthinking is what happens after that process should be complete. You have already thought enough, but the thinking continues, cycling, repeating, going in circles without producing anything new or useful.
It is like a washing machine that has finished the cycle but keeps spinning. The clothes are clean, the work is done, but the machine will not stop. That is such a perfect metaphor.
My brain is a malfunctioning washing machine.
Relatable. And what makes it particularly difficult is that overthinking feels like thinking. It feels productive. Your brain is very active. You are engaged with a problem, but you are not actually solving anything. You are just wearing yourself out.
Busyness without progress, which is one of the most draining combinations possible.
And here is something interesting. Research suggests that overthinkers tend to be more intelligent on average and also more empathetic because the same capacity for nuance that makes you see many sides of a situation also makes it harder to stop processing it.
which is both flattering and deeply inconvenient.
Very. But it is important because it means overthinking is not stupidity. It is not weakness. It is a particular kind of mind that needs particular strategies, not shame.
And I think the shame makes it worse. Because not only are you overthinking the original thing, you are now also overthinking the fact that you are overthinking. A very efficient use of mental energy.
Meta overthinking, the advanced level. You have unlocked a new difficulty setting.
Achieved entirely without trying. But this is real. The self criticism that follows overthinking is often more damaging than the overthinking itself. You think too much, then you criticize yourself for thinking too much. Then you feel anxious about your anxiety, and suddenly you are 3 layers deep in a problem that started with what to have for lunch.
The spiral. And understanding that the spiral is a pattern, not a truth, not a reflection of reality, is one of the first steps toward interrupting it.
Let's talk about what triggers overthinking. Because it is rarely random, there are usually specific conditions that activate it.
Uncertainty is the biggest one, I think. Overthinking thrives in uncertain situations because the mind is trying to think its way to certainty. If I just think about this enough, I will know what will happen. I will be prepared. I will be safe.
But, of course, thinking cannot actually create certainty. Life is genuinely uncertain, and no amount of mental rehearsal changes that fundamental fact.
So the overthinking becomes a coping mechanism, a way of feeling like you are doing something about an uncontrollable situation, even though the thinking is not actually controlling anything.
It is the illusion of control, and it is very seductive because it feels purposeful.
Another major trigger is high stakes. When something matters a great deal, a job interview, a difficult conversation, a relationship decision, the mind escalates its processing in proportion to the perceived importance, which is reasonable up to a point. You should think carefully about things that matter. The problem is when the thinking goes beyond what is genuinely useful and becomes circular.
Past a certain threshold, more thinking does not produce better outcomes. It just produces more exhaustion and more doubt.
And then there is social overthinking, which I think is particularly common and particularly cruel. You have a conversation. It goes fine, probably. But afterwards, your mind starts forensically examining everything you said.
The post-conversation audit, replaying specific moments, reevaluating your word choices, imagining what the other person thought about you.
And here is the thing. The other person almost certainly forgot most of that conversation within an hour. They are living their own life, dealing with their own concerns, not replaying your sentences on a loop.
But in your head, you are the main character of a very detailed internal drama that only you are watching.
A very expensive production. Huge cast, no audience.
And this connects to something called the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much other people are noticing and judging you. In reality, people are mostly absorbed in their own thoughts and experiences. You are far less observed than you feel.
Which is simultaneously humbling and enormously relieving. You are not on a stage. Most people are too busy with their own performance to critique yours.
And once you genuinely internalize that, not just intellectually understand it, but actually feel it, it loosens the grip of social overthinking considerably.
It does.
Though I will admit that fully internalizing it is its own project. Knowing something and feeling it are very different things.
True. The gap between intellectual understanding and emotional experience is where a lot of the real work happens. Let's talk about what actually interrupts the overthinking cycle. Because I want this conversation to be genuinely useful, not just an interesting exploration of the problem.
Yes, because the most beautifully articulated description of overthinking is still useless if it doesn't help you feel any better on a Tuesday evening when your brain won't stop.
First thing, and this sounds deceptively simple, is to physically interrupt the state. Overthinking is not just a mental event, it has a physical dimension. Your body tenses, your breathing becomes shallower, your posture contracts, and those physical signals feed the mental loop.
So, changing the physical state can interrupt the mental one. Stand up, walk around, go outside, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. These are not cures, but they break the feedback loop temporarily, which is enough to create a gap.
And in that gap, you can make a choice about what to do next. The gap is everything. When you are deep inside the spiral, there is no gap. Thought follows thought automatically. But even a small physical interruption can create enough space for a conscious response.
The second thing that genuinely helps me, and this took me a while to trust, is setting a thinking limit. If I have a decision to make or a situation to process, I give myself a specific window. I will think about this properly for 20 minutes. Then I stop.
Which requires actually stopping, not just telling yourself to stop and then continuing anyway under a different mental label.
Very specific. But yes, the discipline of the boundary is the practice. You are training your mind that thinking time has a limit, and that after that limit, additional thought is not serving you.
Third, and this is perhaps the most counterintuitive one, is to actively embrace uncertainty rather than fighting it. Overthinking is largely a battle against not knowing. And it is a battle you cannot win because uncertainty is real and permanent.
So instead of, I need to figure this out completely before I can move forward, the shift is toward, I do not know how this will turn out, and I can move forward anyway.
Tolerating ambiguity, which is a skill. Not a natural state for most people, but genuinely something you can develop with practice.
And finally, and we have said versions of this in previous episodes, is self compassion. Not as a soft addition, but as something structurally necessary. Because the self criticism that accompanies overthinking is itself a form of overthinking.
You think too much, feel bad about thinking too much, think about why you think too much, feel worse, think more. The compassion breaks the cycle. You notice you are overthinking. You treat yourself with the same gentleness you would offer a good friend in the same situation, and you redirect.
Notice, be kind, redirect. That is the whole practice in 3 words.
3 words that require enormous patience and consistent practice. But the practice itself is worthwhile, not just for managing overthinking, but for your entire relationship with your own mind.
And for English learners specifically, I want to say this directly. Overthinking in a second language has its own particular texture. You replay conversations, not just for what you said, but for how you said it. You question whether you were understood, whether you sounded natural, whether people judged your accent or your grammar.
That is a specific and real form of social overthinking, and it deserves the same gentle interruption. You showed up.
You communicated. You were brave enough to try. That is what matters, not the perfect sentence.
And every time you interrupt the overthinking and come back to the conversation, in English, in life, you are building something. Slowly, honestly, importantly.
Word tour?
Word tour.
Welcome to the word tour. 8 B2 words and phrases from today, clearly explained, with 2 real examples each. These are words for your inner life, your mental experiences, and your conversations about what it means to be a thinking, feeling person.
Let them sit with you. The ones that feel true to your experience will stay.
First, circular thinking. Circular thinking means going over the same thoughts again and again, without reaching any new conclusion or making any progress, like a loop with no exit.
Example 1. After an hour of circular thinking about the decision, she realized she was not getting closer to an answer, just more tired.
Example 2. Circular thinking rarely solves problems. It usually just deepens anxiety. Repeat. Circular thinking. Circular thinking.
Next, threshold. A threshold is the point at which something begins or changes, the level you need to reach before something happens. We used it to mean the point where more thinking stops being useful.
Example 1. There is a threshold of preparation beyond which additional rehearsing creates anxiety rather than confidence.
Example 2. She had reached the threshold of useful analysis. Anything beyond that was just feeding her worry. Repeat. Threshold. Threshold.
Next, forensically. To examine something forensically means to analyze it in very precise, thorough detail, the way a detective studies evidence.
Example 1. He forensically reviewed every sentence of the email before sending it, even though a quick read would have been enough.
Example 2. Overthinkers tend to forensically examine social interactions long after they are over. Repeat. Forensically. Forensically.
Next, the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is the psychological tendency to believe that other people are paying far more attention to you, your appearance, your words, your mistakes, than they actually are.
Example 1. His fear of public speaking was partly driven by the spotlight effect.
He believed everyone would notice and remember every mistake he made. Example 2. Understanding the spotlight effect helped her feel less self-conscious. She realized most people were too focused on themselves to judge her closely. Repeat. Spotlight effect. Spotlight effect. Next, ambiguity. Ambiguity means uncertainty or inexactness, when something can be understood in more than one way, or when the outcome is genuinely unknown. Example 1. Tolerating ambiguity is one of the most important emotional skills for adult life, where so few things are certain.
Example 2. Overthinkers tend to forensically examine social interactions long after they are over.
Repeat. Ambiguity. Ambiguity. Next, internalize. To internalize something means to absorb an idea or belief so deeply that it genuinely changes how you feel and behave, not just what you know intellectually.
Example 1. She knew intellectually that mistakes were a part of learning, but it took years to truly internalize that belief.
Example 2. Internalizing self-compassion is different from just understanding it. One lives in the head, the other lives in the body. Repeat. Internalize. Internalize.
Next, redirect. To redirect means to change the direction of something, your attention, your energy, your thought, and point it somewhere new and more useful.
Example 1. When he noticed his thinking becoming circular, he learned to acknowledge it and gently redirect his attention to the present moment.
Example 2. Redirecting anxious energy into physical activity is one of the most effective ways to interrupt the overthinking cycle. Repeat. Redirect. Redirect.
And our final word, counterintuitive. Something counterintuitive goes against what you would naturally expect or assume. It feels like it should not work, but it does.
Example 1. It sounds counterintuitive, but accepting uncertainty rather than fighting it actually reduces anxiety significantly.
Example 2. The most effective solution was counterintuitive. Instead of thinking harder, she needed to think less. Repeat. Counterintuitive. Counterintuitive.
Your 8 words: circular thinking, threshold, forensically, spotlight effect, ambiguity, internalize, redirect, counterintuitive.
Words for the inside of life. Use them in conversation, in writing, in your own thinking. They will make your English richer and your understanding of yourself sharper. And that is our episode. I genuinely feel lighter after this conversation. Is that strange?
Not strange at all. Naming something takes some of its power away. When you have language for what is happening in your mind, it feels less overwhelming and more manageable.
And that is true in any language, but especially in a language you are still building. Finding the words in English for something you feel deeply is its own act of courage.
Today's central idea: overthinking is not a flaw. It is a pattern. And patterns can be interrupted, redirected, and gradually changed. Not by force, but by patient, consistent, compassionate practice.
Our comment question today: what is one thing you tend to overthink most? Decisions, past conversations, future scenarios? Tell us. We're genuinely curious, and you might find others in the comments who feel exactly the same way.
If today's episode gave you something, a word, an idea, a moment of feeling understood, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs it.
Subscribe to the Real English Learning Podcast for thoughtful new conversations. Free, honest, and always made with real care for your journey.
Take care of your English. Take care of your mind. This is Ryan.
And this is Maya. See you in the next one. Bye.